Pond was once a man whose name carried weight. He had been born into privilege, raised within stone walls that symbolized stability, lineage, and power. War had taken him far from home, but even on the battlefield he believed that something solid awaited his return. Honor, family, a future already written for him. That belief shattered the moment he came back alive. His survival, instead of being celebrated, felt like a cruel irony. His father was dead. The family fortune had vanished. The estate that once stood proud now existed only in memory. Pond returned not as a hero, but as a nobleman stripped of everything that made nobility meaningful. The collapse had not happened slowly. It was sudden, absolute, and merciless. His father's business had failed. Debt swallowed the land. Allies disappeared. The moment wealth was gone. Pond learned all of this, not through careful explanation, but through overheard conversations and whispered pity. The house he once called home no longer belonged to him. Servants who used to bow now avoided his eyes. The world had decided that Pond's value had expired, and it wasted no time proving it. For the first time in his life, Pond understood what it meant to be unnecessary, yet pride still clung to him like a stubborn shadow. He did not beg. He did not demand answers. Instead, he walked away carrying nothing but a wounded body and a heavier heart. On the road back from the remnants of his former life, exhaustion overtook him. He slept without direction, without purpose, drifting through days that felt disconnected from any future. It was during one of these aimless moments that fate intervened, quietly and without ceremony, in the form of a girl collapsed by the roadside. She was barely conscious, bruised, filthy, and clearly accustomed to cruelty. People passed her without slowing down. To them, she was invisible, another unwanted burden in a world that rewarded strength and ignored suffering. Pond stopped, not out of romance, nor charity fueled by excess wealth, because he had none left. He stopped because, in that moment, he recognized something painfully familiar in her condition: abandonment. He helped her up, gave her water, and brought her with him, not to rescue her soul, but simply to remove her from immediate harm. When Pond took her home, his intentions were practical and restrained. He needed someone to cook, to clean, to help maintain the decaying house that remained in his name. She needed shelter. There was no illusion of kindness wrapped in poetic promises. He offered her work and a roof. She accepted without hesitation. He did not even ask her past. People with nothing are rarely asked to explain themselves. This unspoken agreement formed the foundation of their relationship, built not on affection, but necessity. Only later did Pond realize the irony of the situation. A man born into privilege, now relying on a former beggar to keep his household alive. A girl who owned nothing, now standing inside a noble estate that smelled of dust and faded glory. Their lives crossed not because of destiny, but because both had fallen far enough to meet at the same level. Pond remained distant, emotionally sealed off, still haunted by the echo of what he had lost. He treated her fairly, but coldly. She worked diligently, silently, never asking for more than what was given. At this stage, there was no love, no promise, and no future imagined between them. He still believed he could rebuild what had been destroyed, reclaim his position, and restore his family name. The girl, whose name would later matter deeply, existed only as part of the background of his struggle. A presence, not a priority. And yet, without either of them realizing it, the first step of a far greater transformation had already been taken. Not upward, but inward. Because sometimes, before a man can rise again, he must first learn how it feels to stand among those the world has already forgotten. The girl from the street did not speak much, not because she lacked words, but because life had taught her that silence was safer. In Pond's house, She moved carefully, as if every step required permission. She cleaned rooms that had not been touched in years, cooked simple meals from scarce supplies, and slept in a corner that barely shielded her from the cold. To Pond, she was still a temporary solution, a quiet presence that made survival easier. He did not ask her name at first. He did not feel the need to. Names belonged to people who were meant to stay. Over time, however, small changes became impossible to ignore. The house began to feel less abandoned. Dust no longer ruled every surface. Warm food appeared on the table without comment. The girl worked with a focus that felt almost excessive, as if effort itself were her only form of security. She never complained, never questioned his instructions, and never looked at him directly for too long. It was not fear that shaped her behavior, but habit. Pond noticed this, though he rarely acknowledged it. He told himself that he was simply regaining order in his life, nothing more. Outside the walls of the estate, people noticed as well. A nobleman living with a stranger from the street was not something the town could ignore. Some spoke with mockery, others with suspicion. To them, Pond's fall had reached a new low. The girl, now known as Demea, became the subject of cruel curiosity. Where had she come from? Why was she allowed inside that house? Rumors grew without evidence, shaped by prejudice rather than truth. Neither Pond nor Demea responded. Silence, once again, was the safer choice. Pond remained emotionally distant. His thoughts were still occupied by the life he had lost and the woman he could not forget. Elizabeth's absence lingered in his mind, like an unfinished sentence. The girl in his house did not replace that memory. She existed in a different space altogether. While Pond lived in the shadow of the past, Demea lived entirely in the present. Each day was a task to be completed, a roof to be earned, a place to be kept. Survival left little room for longing, yet distance does not mean indifference. Pond began to notice details he had once ignored. The way she mended old clothes instead of asking for new ones. The way she ate only after he had finished. The way she flinched at raised voices, even when they were not directed at her. These observations unsettled him more than he cared to admit. They forced him to confront a truth he preferred to avoid. He was no longer the only broken person under that roof. He was simply the one who had fallen later. Demea never asked for kindness, but she responded deeply to fairness. A simple word of approval stayed with her longer than food. Being allowed to stay mattered more than comfort. In her eyes, Pond was not a fallen nobleman or a former soldier. He was the man who did not turn away. That alone placed him apart from the rest of the world she had known. Still, she did not mistake this for affection. Gratitude was safer than hope, and hope had betrayed her before. This fragile balance defined their early days together. Two people sharing a space, bound by necessity, separated by unspoken histories. Pond believed he was merely tolerating a stranger from the street. Demea believed she had been given a second life. Neither understood how deeply this imbalance would matter later. What began as a practical arrangement slowly reshaped the rhythm of Pond's days, challenging his pride and unsettling his assumptions. Without realizing it, he had allowed someone from the margins of society to step into the quiet center of his ruined world. And once that door opened, it would never fully close again. If the fall of Pond's fortune had broken his standing in the world, then the loss of Elizabeth quietly dismantled what remained of his inner balance. Their history was not one of dramatic conflict, but of shared expectation. She had been the woman meant to walk beside him into the future that now no longer existed. Their bond had been shaped by family approval, social alignment, and the unspoken belief that some paths were simply fixed. Pond had gone to war believing that love, like land and title, would wait for him. Reality proved otherwise. Their reunion was brief and painfully restrained. Elizabeth stood before him, not as a lover seeking explanation, but as a woman bound by necessity. His disappearance on the battlefield had forced decisions upon her. With Pond presumed dead and his family ruined, her engagement to Francis became an act of survival rather than betrayal. Yet knowing the reason did not soften the wound. Pride rose where forgiveness might have grown. Pond chose silence over confrontation, dignity over desperation. He refused to ask her to justify herself, not because he did not care, but because caring too openly would expose how much he had already lost. Elizabeth, in turn, found herself trapped between regret and obligation. Instead, she carried her own quiet guilt, unsure whether she had chosen safety or simply surrendered to pressure. The timing of their lives had betrayed them both. In another world, their reunion might have healed old wounds. In this one, it only confirmed that love, when placed under the weight of circumstance, could fracture beyond repair. This unresolved tension followed Pond home. It shaped the way he moved, the way he spoke, and the way he looked at the future. His pride would not allow him to compete with Francis, nor would it allow him to plead for Elizabeth's return. He convinced himself that rebuilding his life mattered more than reopening emotional wounds. Yet pride is rarely as clean as it pretends to be. Beneath his restraint lived anger, disappointment, and a bitterness he could not fully admit. Demea observed these changes without understanding their origin. She noticed the heaviness in his silence, the way his thoughts drifted elsewhere, the moments when his gaze lingered on memories she could not see. She did not know Elizabeth's name at first, only that there was someone absent who occupied space in Pond's heart. Demea did not compete with that absence. She accepted it as another reality she had no power to alter. In her world, some losses were simply facts. The contrast between the two women was not a matter of worth, but of position. Elizabeth represented a life of expectation and social alignment. Demea represented survival stripped of illusion. Pond stood between these worlds, unable to return to one and unwilling, at least yet, to fully embrace the other. His pride kept him anchored to what he had been, even as circumstances pushed him toward what he was becoming. When news of Elizabeth's approaching marriage reached him, it did not come as a surprise. It arrived as confirmation. Pond reacted not with outrage, but with a tightening resolve. Whatever future he built would be built without her. He would not allow himself to be defined by what he could not reclaim. This decision, though outwardly composed, came at a cost. In choosing dignity over vulnerability, he sealed away a part of himself that might have otherwise healed. This chapter of the story is not about romance fulfilled or love redeemed. It is about how pride, when combined with timing and social pressure, can quietly dismantle something sincere. Pond did not lose Elizabeth because he lacked feeling. He lost her because neither of them had the freedom to choose without consequence. In the space left behind by that loss, something else began to take shape. Not yet love, and not yet hope, but the slow realization that life would no longer follow the path he had once believed was guaranteed. The town had always been skilled at observing decline. It noticed when curtains stayed closed too long, when horses were sold, when laughter disappeared from a once lively house. Now, it noticed something else. A stranger lived under Pond's roof, not a guest, not a relative, but a woman whose clothes and manners betrayed her origins. In a place where lineage was currency, this alone was enough to ignite rumor. Words passed from mouth to mouth, gathering distortion with each retelling. A fallen nobleman, they said, had finally lost his sense. Some spoke with mockery, others with feigned concern, but all agreed on one thing. Pond heard the whispers, though rarely directly. They reached him through pauses in conversation, through looks that lingered a moment too long, through the sudden coldness of former acquaintances. He understood the language of exclusion well enough, yet he chose not to respond. Pride had already cost him too much. He would not now waste energy defending himself against people who had abandoned him when his fortune disappeared. As long as his household functioned, as long as he remained answerable only to himself, the town could speak as it pleased. For Demea, the rumors cut deeper. She heard them plainly, without filters or politeness. To the townspeople, she was not a person, but a symbol, a reminder that boundaries could be crossed, that hierarchy could be unsettled. She learned quickly how eyes changed when she walked past, how conversations stopped when she entered a room. Some servants treated her with open disdain, others with exaggerated obedience, meant to humiliate rather than respect. Demea accepted it all in silence. In her life, attention had always arrived in the form of cruelty. This was merely another version of it. What the town could not see was her loyalty. Demea worked not because she was ordered to, but because staying useful was her way of remaining safe. She rose before dawn, cleaned without complaint, and stretched meager resources into meals that could sustain 2 people through long days. She did not linger in shared spaces, nor did she impose her presence. In every action, there was restraint, not submission born of fear, but discipline born of survival. She understood instinctively that visibility was dangerous. Pond noticed her effort, though he rarely acknowledged it aloud. He saw how the house regained a rhythm, how disorder retreated, room by room. He noticed that his days felt marginally more bearable, his nights less empty. He had grown accustomed to loss, had almost accepted solitude as a necessary companion. Demea's quiet efficiency challenged that acceptance. Without intending to, she reminded him that order, once lost, could still be rebuilt piece by piece. Their interactions remained restrained. Pond did not confide in her, nor did he offer comfort. He maintained distance, convinced that emotional involvement would only complicate a life already fractured. Demea respected this boundary. She did not seek his attention, nor did she attempt to interpret his silences. Her devotion was practical rather than emotional, expressed through action instead of words. If she cared for him, she did so quietly, without expectation or demand. As the rumors intensified, tension grew within the household. Other servants, emboldened by public opinion, began to test limits. Small acts of cruelty emerged, disguised as obedience. Tasks were deliberately made harder. Mistakes were exaggerated. Demea endured them all. She did not complain to Pond, believing that drawing his attention would only worsen her position. To her, endurance was safer than justice. She had learned long ago that fairness was rare and temporary. Pond, however, was not blind. He recognized mistreatment when he saw it, and when he finally intervened, his response was firm but measured. He did not scold or punish publicly. Instead, he made it clear that disrespect within his house would not be tolerated. For the first time, she understood that his silence was not indifference. It was restraint. He protected without announcing it. This moment marked a subtle shift. The rumors outside continued, but inside the house, a fragile trust began to form. Not love, not yet, but recognition. Pond began to see Demea not merely as a solution to practical problems, but as someone who carried her own quiet strength. Demea began to understand that Pond's distance did not stem from cruelty, but from wounds he had not learned how to expose. The world around them remained hostile. Society did not forgive easily, and it certainly did not forget. But within the walls of that aging estate, something rare was taking shape. Loyalty without expectation, devotion without demand. In a story filled with noise, ambition, and betrayal, this silent bond stood apart. It was unnoticed by the town, misunderstood by observers, and unacknowledged by the 2 people living it. Yet it would soon become the foundation upon which every future choice would be built. The decision did not arrive with ceremony or hesitation. It came quietly, shaped by pressure that had been building for far too long. Rumors had reached a point where silence was no longer neutral. What people whispered about Pond and Demea was no longer limited to mockery. It had begun to poison reputations and threaten stability. Pond understood this better than most. He had lived his entire life within the rules of class and expectation. Now, standing at the edge of what remained of his name, he realized that refusing to choose was itself a choice, and not one that would protect either of them. When Pond announced that he would marry Demea, there was no celebration. The house did not fill with congratulations, nor did allies return. Instead, the world responded with shock, then rejection. To the nobility, his decision was unforgivable. A fallen nobleman could be pitied, even ignored, but one who openly crossed class boundaries was dangerous. By marrying a woman with no lineage, no property, and no social standing, Pond had not only confirmed his decline, he had rejected the very system that defined his identity. Invitations disappeared. Former acquaintances withdrew as if his choice were contagious. Demea received the news in silence. She did not cry, nor did she smile. To her, marriage was not a romantic triumph, but a frightening elevation. Becoming Pond's wife meant visibility, scrutiny, and responsibility she had never imagined for herself. She had learned how to survive in the shadows. Standing in the light felt exposed and dangerous. Yet she did not refuse. She understood what the marriage meant for Pond. He was giving up what little remained of his standing to give her protection and legitimacy. In a world that had never offered her either, this gesture carried a weight she could barely comprehend. The wedding itself was modest, almost austere. No grand hall, no influential guests, no lavish symbols of wealth, only a small gathering of those who remained loyal, and even they attended with caution rather than joy. There was no illusion that this union would be welcomed by society. It existed in defiance of it. Pond did not pretend otherwise. He did not speak of love or destiny. He spoke of responsibility, of choosing to stand by a decision fully, regardless of consequence. For him, this marriage was not an escape from loss, but an acceptance of a new reality. After the wedding, the consequences arrived swiftly. Investors hesitated. Opportunities vanished. People who once tolerated Pond's presence now avoided him openly. He had crossed an invisible line, one that could not be uncrossed. Demea felt the weight of this rejection acutely. She blamed herself, believing that her presence had cost Pond the last fragments of his former life. Yet Pond did not waver. He did not accuse her, nor did he express regret. When others questioned his judgment, he answered with calm finality. He had made his choice. That was all that mattered. Within the household, roles began to shift, though not without difficulty. Demea struggled to adjust to her new position. Being called mistress or lady felt unnatural, almost dishonest. She continued to work as she always had, cooking and cleaning alongside the servants, refusing to delegate tasks she had once performed alone. This unsettled Pond. He understood her discomfort, but he also understood the danger of allowing her to erase herself out of habit. He insisted, gently but firmly, that she begin to accept her new role, not because status mattered to him, but because refusing it would mean denying her own worth. This period marked a profound transformation for both of them. Pond, once defined by title and expectation, now stood apart from the class that had shaped him. He learned what it meant to be judged solely by action rather than ancestry. Demea, once invisible and expendable, was now forced to confront a world that looked at her too closely, measured her too harshly. Their marriage did not erase hardship. It intensified it, but it also created something rare and resilient, a partnership rooted not in advantage, but in mutual choice. This union defied class, convention, and logic as society understood it. It did not promise happiness or security. What it offered instead was honesty. In a world built on appearances, Pond and Demea chose truth. That decision would not shield them from suffering, but it would anchor every challenge that followed. From this point forward, whatever they faced, they would face it together, no longer as master and servant, but as two people bound by a commitment the world refused to understand. For a brief moment after the marriage, hope dared to resurface. Not the loud, reckless kind that promises miracles, but a quieter belief that persistence might still be rewarded. Pond threw himself into work with renewed determination. The mine, once the backbone of his family's fortune, became the focus of every waking hour. He studied records, consulted technicians, and negotiated tirelessly with hesitant investors. Each small sign of progress felt earned through exhaustion rather than luck. Demea watched him closely, sensing that this fragile momentum was the only thing keeping him upright. Life, however, has a way of testing hope at the moment it begins to feel justified. Just as the mine showed signs of potential, tragedy arrived without warning. Illness spread through the region, indifferent to class, effort, or intention. What began as distant concern quickly became personal. Demea fell ill first, her body weakened by years of deprivation long before comfort ever reached her. Pond, who had faced battlefields without hesitation, found himself helpless in the face of fever and uncertainty. He stayed by her side, measuring time not in hours, but in breaths. In the midst of this fear, a greater loss followed. Their child, born into a world already strained by hardship, did not survive. The grief was immediate and overwhelming, stripping away any remaining illusions of control. Pond held the small, motionless form in his arms, unable to reconcile effort with outcome. He had rebuilt walls, restored order, and chosen responsibility over pride, yet none of it had protected what mattered most. In that moment, hope did not simply fade. It shattered. Demea's recovery was slow, marked by weakness and silence. When she learned of their child's death, her grief unfolded quietly. She did not scream or collapse. Instead, she withdrew into herself, carrying sorrow with the same restraint she had once carried hunger. Pond struggled to understand this stillness. His own grief was heavy, volatile, threatening to consume him. He feared that if he allowed himself to fully feel it, there would be nothing left to hold on to. So he buried himself deeper into work, convinced that motion could replace mourning. Outside their home, the world did not pause. The mine demanded results. Workers needed wages. Investors demanded reassurance. Winter loomed closer with each passing day. The weight of responsibility pressed harder than ever. Pond faced a cruel paradox. To protect those who depended on him, he had to continue forward, even as his personal life unraveled. Demea, sensing his turmoil, tried to support him in the only way she knew how. She returned to routine, to structure, to quiet service. It was her way of saying that not everything had been lost. Yet loss changes the meaning of effort. Where Pond once worked with determination, he now worked with desperation. The mine became more than a business venture. It was proof that suffering could still lead somewhere. That sacrifice had not been meaningless. Each delay, each setback, struck him harder than before. When news arrived that another mine owner had taken his own life under similar pressures, Pond felt the warning clearly. He stood on a fragile edge, one misstep away from collapse. In this darkness, the loyalty of the workers became unexpectedly vital. They had seen Pond stand with them during shortages, refuse violence during unrest, and prioritize survival over profit. When opportunity arose in the form of a shipwreck along the coast, it was Pond who chose restraint and fairness over chaos. He insisted that resources be shared rather than seized. This decision, made in the shadow of his own grief, earned him something far more valuable than immediate gain: trust. The shipwreck did not erase loss, nor did it restore the child they had buried, but it reminded Pond that leadership was not measured by success alone. It was measured by how one acted when hope had already been wounded. Demea, witnessing this moment, saw something change in him. His pain remained, but it no longer isolated him. It connected him to others who had suffered in different ways. Hope and loss collided violently in this chapter of their lives. One did not replace the other. Instead, they existed together, reshaping what survival meant. Pond learned that rebuilding was not a straight ascent. It was a series of fragile steps taken while carrying grief that never truly disappeared. Demea learned that even in loss, her presence mattered. Their future remained uncertain, but one truth had become clear: they had endured what should have broken them. As the mine began to show promise, another force moved quietly against Pond. Wealth, once absent, returned in fragments, and with it came attention from men who measured value only in leverage and control. Among them was George, a financier whose smile never reached his eyes. He represented a world Pond knew too well, a world where influence mattered more than truth, and victory was achieved long before rules were broken openly. George did not confront Pond directly at first. He watched, calculated, and waited for weakness. The first strike came not through force, but through betrayal. Information leaked from within Pond's circle, precise enough to damage trust among investors. Meetings ended abruptly. Promises were withdrawn without explanation. The mine consortium, built carefully through patience and shared risk, began to fracture. Pond sensed that this was not coincidence. Someone close had spoken when silence was required. The realization hurt more than the financial blow. He had already lost wealth and status. Losing trust cut deeper. Suspicion fell naturally on family. Old wounds reopened as Pond traced the path of information back to those bound to him by blood rather than loyalty. Pride had once kept him distant from them. Now, caution replaced distance. He confronted no one directly, choosing observation over accusation. In doing so, he confirmed what he feared most. The betrayal had not come from enemies alone, but from those who believed that sacrificing him was necessary for their own survival. In their eyes, Pond had already stepped outside the boundaries of respectability. Betraying him carried no shame. George exploited this fracture expertly. He positioned himself as a solution while quietly tightening control. He spoke of compromise, of reasonable terms, of mutual benefit. Yet every proposal carried a cost that extended beyond money. Acceptance meant surrendering authority. It meant allowing power to shift away from those who worked the land and toward those who profited from distance. Pond understood the implication immediately. This was not negotiation. It was absorption. Agree, and his mine would survive. In name only. The pressure intensified. Legal threats emerged, vague but threatening. Accusations circulated, carefully crafted to appear legitimate. Pond found himself surrounded by obstacles designed not to defeat him outright, but to exhaust him into compliance. Demea watched this unfold with growing concern. She recognized the pattern instinctively. It mirrored the abuse of power she had known all her life. Those who held influence spoke softly while tightening their grip, confident that resistance would collapse under weight. Pond faced a decision that defined him more clearly than any title ever had. He could accept George's terms, preserve the mine, secure short-term stability, and protect his household from immediate danger. Or he could refuse, risking financial ruin, legal consequence, and social retaliation. There was no option without cost. The choice was not between right and wrong, but between comfort and integrity. In this moment, Pond's past as a nobleman offered no guidance. Only his present values mattered. He chose refusal. Pond did not expose George publicly, nor did he retaliate with deceit. He relied instead on transparency, documenting transactions, clarifying ownership, and appealing to those investors who still believed in the mine's original purpose. This strategy offered no guarantee of success. It merely ensured that if he fell, he would fall without compromising himself. The consequences arrived quickly. Funding dried up further. Legal pressure increased. Rumors escalated into accusations. Authorities began to take interest, encouraged by voices with influence. When Pond was detained under questionable charges, the message was clear. Power had limits, and he had reached them. Demea's fear was immediate, but she did not plead or beg on his behalf. Instead, she stood firm. She sought allies quietly, leaned on those who still remembered Pond's fairness, and refused to let panic dictate her actions. Her strength, once born from survival, now transformed into resolve. This chapter was not defined by triumph, but by moral clarity. Pond did not emerge victorious in the conventional sense. He lost resources, security, and standing once again. Yet, he retained something far more difficult to reclaim once surrendered. He retained his choice. In a world where power often dictated outcome, he demonstrated that refusal itself could be an act of resistance. Betrayal revealed the limits of blood ties. Power exposed the cost of integrity. And in navigating both, Pond proved that moral choice, though rarely rewarded immediately, defined the kind of man he would remain, even when everything else was taken. When Pond finally returned home after the weight of accusations, losses, and narrow escapes, he did not return as a victor. He returned as a man stripped down to what could not be taken from him. Power had failed him. Lineage had abandoned him. And justice had proven fragile. Yet, within the quiet walls of his home, something remained intact. Demea was there, not waiting in desperation, but standing with calm resolve. She did not ask how much he had lost, or what future still remained. Her presence carried a message more convincing than reassurance. Whatever stood ahead, he would not face it alone. The rebuilding of their life did not begin with wealth or recognition. It began with routine. Mornings resumed their rhythm. Meals were shared, sometimes in silence, sometimes with tentative conversation. Work continued where possible, not driven by ambition but by responsibility to those who depended on them. The mine, though damaged by interference and delay, was not abandoned. Workers returned gradually, drawn not by promise of riches, but by trust earned through hardship. Pond did not command loyalty. He inspired it by refusing to abandon others when doing so would have been easier. Demea's role shifted quietly but decisively. She was no longer the woman who survived by staying unnoticed. Loss had carved space within her where fear once lived, and she chose to fill it with purpose. She supported the household openly, spoke when decisions affected others, and offered counsel grounded in lived experience rather than theory. Some still questioned her presence, unable to reconcile her origins with her position, but the force of her character gradually silenced doubt. Respect, once denied to her, became unavoidable. As stability slowly returned, so did clarity. One evening, in a moment free of crisis or interruption, Demea asked Pond a question that had lingered unspoken for far too long. Why her? Why choose a woman with no status, no dowry, no protection to offer? Why endure ridicule and loss for a marriage that brought no advantage? The question carried no accusation, only uncertainty born from years of being told she was replaceable. Pond did not answer immediately. He had learned that some truths lose their meaning when rushed. When he finally spoke, his voice held neither poetry nor defense. He told her that love did not arrive as a calculation, that it did not require justification, He had chosen her because she had stayed when nothing obligated her to, because she had endured when escape would have been understandable, because in a world obsessed with appearances, she had never pretended to be anything other than what she was. To him, that honesty mattered more than pedigree ever had. This answer did not transform their life overnight. Doubt does not disappear simply because it is named, but it planted something new. Demea began to see herself not as an exception, but as a choice freely made. Pond, in turn, allowed himself to release the remnants of a past defined by expectation. Their bond, shaped by shared survival rather than idealized romance, deepened with quiet strength. It was not passionate in display, but steady in presence. The future they built was modest, but intentional. Progress at the mine resumed slowly, guided by cooperation rather than exploitation. Pond advocated for fair alliances, believing that stability came from shared benefit, not dominance. This philosophy cost him rapid expansion, but protected him from repeating old mistakes. Demea supported these efforts, acting as a bridge between households and workers. Her understanding of hardship, lending credibility to every decision made. Life did not reward them with immunity from loss. Memories of what they had endured remained close, shaping their caution and their gratitude. But suffering no longer defined them. It informed them. Their home became a place of quiet refuge rather than ambition. When others passed through, they sensed it immediately. This was not a house built on status, but on endurance. In choosing love without reasons, Pond and Demea rebuilt a life not measured by what was regained, but by what was no longer feared. They had learned that dignity was not inherited, that loyalty could not be purchased, and that love, when freed from expectation, could become something far stronger than romance. It could become a foundation, and upon that foundation, they stood, not untouched by the world, but no longer broken by it.